When a believer genuinely decides to place their trust in Allah, something remarkable begins to happen inside the heart. There is a quieting of the noise, a softening of the fear, and a calming of the anxieties that so often cloud our clarity. It is not that life becomes easier or that challenges disappear, but rather that the heart begins to see with a different lens. The believer starts to understand that relying on Allah is not simply a spiritual concept to be admired from afar. It is a lived reality that reshapes how we view every moment of our lives. Trusting Allah brings with it a certain clarity that cannot be manufactured through motivational speeches or temporary emotional highs. It is not the kind of clarity that comes and goes depending on mood or circumstance. It is a clarity rooted in faith, in the certainty that Allah is actively involved in our lives, aware of what weighs on us, aware of what confuses us, and aware of what we fear. When this realization settles in the heart, it becomes easier to let go of the illusion that we must control every detail of our future. Because the truth is, we cannot, we never could, but Allah can, and He always does. In our daily lives, we are pulled in countless directions. There are responsibilities, deadlines, expectations, hopes, uncertainties, and the constant pressure to figure everything out. We wake up each day with a quiet fear. What if things don't go the way I plan? What if everything falls apart? What if I'm not enough? Trusting Allah does not erase these questions, but it reshapes them. It allows us to shift from what will happen to me to Allah is with me. This shift is where stability enters the heart. This is where the believer finds grounding. You see, when you leave matters in Allah's hand, you have not abandoned effort. You have abandoned the anxiety associated with trying to control what is beyond you. And this is where real strength lies. The believer who relies on Allah moves with conviction. They take steps forward not because they know exactly how everything will unfold, but because they trust the one who does. This trust liberates the mind from unnecessary fears and allows a person to focus on what truly matters. The actions they can take today, the character they can embody now, and the sincerity they can cultivate in every choice. This clarity that emerges from reliance on Allah also has a way of simplifying life. Many times, confusion arises not because there is no answer, but because we are juggling the opinions of people, the expectations of society, and the weight of our own insecurities. When the heart turns to Allah with sincerity and asks, "Guide me," it is as though the unnecessary layers begin to peel away. You begin to notice what is essential and what is merely noise. Decisions that once felt overwhelming become manageable, and even if the path does not become easy, it becomes purposeful. Trust in Allah also creates stability because it anchors the heart to something unchanging. Everything in life fluctuates: people, opportunities, finances, health, relationships, emotions, but Allah never changes. When your trust is placed in something constant, your heart becomes constant. You stop depending on temporary things for permanent reassurance. And when you no longer depend on fragile things to hold you together, you stop breaking every time they shift. One of the subtle beauties of relying on Allah is that it transforms the way you interpret the events of your life. When good comes your way, you recognize it as a gift, not an entitlement. When difficulty comes, you see it as a lesson, not a punishment. And when something you deeply hoped for slips away, you understand that perhaps Allah is protecting you from something you cannot yet see. This perspective is what brings emotional resilience. This is what allows a person to pick themselves up again and again without losing faith. We often think clarity comes from having all the answers, but in truth, clarity comes from knowing who is in control. A believer who hands their affairs to Allah does not walk in darkness. They walk in submission, and submission brings light. It brings a sense of peace that is not loud or dramatic, but gentle, steady, and deeply grounding. It is the peace of knowing that Allah is taking care of you in ways you cannot understand, in moments you may not even notice, and in details you would never think to ask for. Think about how many times in life something happened that felt confusing in the moment. Yet later you realized it was the best possible outcome. Think about how many times you feared something intensely, only to later look back and say, Allah protected me. Think about how many times doors closed and you felt devastated, only to later realize that had that door opened, it would have led you into harm, heartbreak, or regret. This is the wisdom of Allah at work in our lives long before we recognize it, and the more trust we place in Him, the more we begin to see these patterns with clarity. To leave everything in Allah's hand is not a passive state. It is an active surrender. It is a conscious decision every morning to say, "Oh Allah, I will do my part today. I will try my best, I will strive with sincerity, but the outcome, the results, the unseen, that is yours." When this becomes the language of the heart, life feels lighter, challenges feel surmountable, and the believer feels protected even before the help arrives. Trust is not built overnight. It grows through experiences, through dua, through moments of vulnerability, through seeing how Allah never abandoned you even in your lowest points. And the more you trust Him, the more He opens your heart to see His mercy in everything. In the end, the clarity and stability that come from relying on Allah are gifts given to those who are willing to let go, to surrender the illusion of control, and to walk through life knowing that the one holding their hand is the one who controls the heavens and the earth. And when you understand that, you stop fearing the future because you know who is writing it. May your heart always find peace in the one who never leaves you. When we speak about leaving everything in Allah's hand, it is essential that we do not misunderstand what that truly means. Relying on Allah is never an excuse to sit back, fold our arms, and wait for life to unfold without our participation. Tawakkul has never been the abandonment of action. It has always been the beautification of effort. It is the merging of your striving with your trust, your discipline with your reliance, your planning with your surrender. This balance is what gives meaning to every step you take. Allah does not ask you to control outcomes, but He does ask you to show up with sincerity, with excellence, with discipline, and with a heart anchored to Him. Every one of us is placed in this life with responsibilities, duties, and opportunities, and each one of us is accountable for what we do with them. When you place matters in Allah's hand, you are not saying, "I will do nothing and wait for miracles." You are saying, "I will give everything I can, and I will trust Allah with everything beyond that." This is the essence of what it means to walk the path of a believer. Your role is not to manufacture success. Your role is to put forth effort worthy of the one you are relying on. Sometimes people imagine that if Allah is in control, then what is the point of effort? But the truth is, effort is a form of worship. It is a testimony of your sincerity. When you work hard, not for the applause of people, not for worldly validation, but because you know Allah sees your striving, you transform ordinary actions into acts of devotion. Waking up early, being disciplined, improving your character, honoring your commitments, striving for excellence in school, work, family, and worship, all of it becomes a reflection of your faith. You are showing Allah that you value the gifts He has given you. You are showing Him that you are grateful for the opportunities, and that you understand the privilege of being able to act. This is why the believer does not become lazy or passive under the banner of trust. True trust creates energy, not lethargy. It creates direction, not confusion. It fuels your determination because you know that your effort is seen, your sincerity is recorded, and your intentions are honored. You understand that Allah does not ask perfection from you. He asks effort, And what a beautiful mercy that is! You do not have to be extraordinary to be accepted by Allah, you simply have to be sincere. But effort without sincerity becomes mechanical. It becomes driven by ego, or fear of failure, or the desire to impress people. When your effort is rooted in trust, however, everything changes. You stop working just to prove yourself, and you start working because you are accountable to Allah. You begin to realize that your task is not to chase every opportunity frantically, but to pursue what is in front of you with intention and excellence. You do your best in the present moment, trusting that whatever Allah has written for you will come in its time. This is where discipline enters the life of the believer. Discipline is not about perfection or rigid routines. It is about showing up consistently even when motivation fades. Motivation is emotional, it rises and falls, but discipline is a choice. It is the decision to do what is right even when it is difficult, even when you are tired, even when you do not see immediate results. And when your discipline is grounded in faith, it becomes easier to maintain because you are no longer doing it alone. You are doing it with the awareness that Allah is supporting you, guiding you, and strengthening you. There will be days when your effort feels small and your progress feels invisible. But remember this, Allah does not measure results the way people do. People look at outcomes, Allah looks at consistency. People celebrate success, Allah celebrates sincerity. People applaud achievements, Allah rewards perseverance. The effort you make when no one is watching, the sacrifices you make that no one knows about, the tears you shed in silent prayers, all of these are recorded with the one who sees everything. And sometimes, the effort you put in will not lead to the result you wanted. Sometimes you will give your best and still face setbacks. But even then, your effort has never been wasted. It has shaped you, strengthened you, purified you, and brought you closer to Allah. You may not receive what you were striving for, but you will receive something far more valuable, growth. And in many cases, that growth is exactly what Allah wanted for you all along. When you leave outcomes to Allah, your heart no longer carries the burden of constant worry. You begin to understand that your job is to move, and Allah's job is to open the right doors. You strive, and Allah decides. You plan, and Allah perfects. This understanding removes the pressure to control life. It frees you from the fear of failure, because you recognize that the only true failure is abandoning effort altogether. Every prophet embodied this balance between effort and trust. They strove with absolute conviction even when the odds were against them. They planned, they acted, they persevered, and then they handed the results to Allah. Their lives are reminders that Allah does not expect us to carry the weight of destiny. He only expects us to take the steps He has placed before us. So in your own life, no matter what you are working towards, healing, education, career, personal growth, spiritual improvement, show up with your best. Not because success is guaranteed, but because effort is worship. Work with sincerity, not for the outcome, but for the one who controls it. Remind yourself every day that your effort is your offering, and Allah's response is His wisdom. And once you understand this, your heart will find a peace that effort alone can never provide. Do what is in your hands, and leave what is beyond your reach in the hands of Allah. One of the most profound realizations a believer can reach is understanding that Allah's plan is infinitely wiser than our fears, our calculations, and our expectations. We live in a world where we are conditioned to want instant clarity, instant answers, and instant gratification. We want everything to unfold according to our timeline, our logic, our desires. But life rarely works that way. And the more we try to force life into our own blueprint, the more frustration and disappointment we create for ourselves. It is only when we begin to trust the wisdom behind Allah's decisions that we experience true peace. There are moments when life seems to pull us in directions we did not choose, when doors we prayed for stay firmly shut, when paths we were certain about suddenly disappear, and when people we thought would remain forever drift away. In those moments, the heart naturally feels unsettled. It asks, why? It wonders, what is happening? It fears, what will become of me? But if you look deeply at your own life, you will notice a pattern. How many times has something you desperately wanted turned out not to be good for you? How many times has something you feared ended up becoming a blessing? How many times did a detour lead you to a destination you didn't even know you needed? The wisdom of Allah's plan is often hidden in the moments we resist the most. What we perceive as delays are sometimes protections. What we experience as loss is sometimes a clearing of space for something better. What feels like a setback can be the beginning of a transformation we never would have initiated on our own. When a believer understands this, the heart begins to relax. It begins to surrender not out of defeat, but out of recognition that Allah knows what we do not know. We often fear what we cannot predict. We become anxious when life moves outside of our expectations. But Allah's knowledge is not limited by the horizon of our understanding. He sees what lies ahead. He knows the consequences of every choice, every relationship, every opportunity. He knows the unseen dangers, the hidden harms, the long-term outcomes that our eyes cannot perceive. And because He loves us, He protects us even when that protection comes in the form of a closed door or an unexpected turn. There are times when Allah withholds something not because you are unworthy, but because the timing is not right. Sometimes you are not ready for what you are asking for. Sometimes the people involved are not ready. Sometimes there are events still unfolding that need to settle before the blessing can come. And sometimes Allah is preparing you, strengthening your character, deepening your patience, expanding your understanding, so that when the blessing does arrive, you can carry it with wisdom and gratitude rather than taking it for granted. This is why the believer does not view delays as denials. A delay is simply a chapter in your story that you must pass through for your own growth. And when you trust that Allah is the author of your story, you stop trying to skip the chapters that shape you. You begin to understand that the waiting itself is part of the answer, part of the mercy, part of the plan. There will also be moments in life when Allah removes something from you that you believed was essential. You may lose an opportunity, a relationship, a job, a dream, or a path you deeply cared about. In that pain, it may feel like everything is falling apart. But sometimes, Allah must remove what is temporary to give you what is lasting. Sometimes He must take away what you are attached to in order to redirect you to what will elevate you. And although the heart resists change, it later recognizes that some of the greatest blessings arrived as a result of something you once cried over. Nothing Allah decrees is random. Every turn you take is intentional. Every delay has purpose. Every hardship carries a hidden gift. But the heart can only see this when it trusts rather than resists. When you rely on Allah's wisdom more than your own fears, life becomes less about fighting the unknown and more about embracing the journey with humility and openness. Think about the stories of those before us. How often did the path to relief come through difficulty? How often did the path to victory come through struggle? How often did Allah's mercy appear in a form that at first glance looked like hardship? This is the nature of divine wisdom. It is subtle, it is layered. It unfolds slowly, often testing your patience before revealing its beauty. There will be nights when you pray for something and wake up wondering why it hasn't happened yet. There will be days when you feel like you are standing still while everyone around you moves forward. But Allah is never still in His care for you. He is never late in His timing. He is never absent in His protection. And the believer who knows this walks with a heart that is at ease, even when the world around them is turbulent. When you trust in Allah's wisdom, you stop measuring your life by deadlines or comparing your journey to others. You stop asking, why not now? and start saying, "Whenever you will, O Allah, I will be content." You begin to see that sometimes the very thing you are waiting for is waiting for you to grow into the person who can receive it. You start to understand that life is not happening to you. Life is happening for you, under the care of the one who is more merciful to you than you could ever be to yourself. So let your heart find comfort in this truth. Even when you don't understand what is happening, Allah does. Even when you cannot see the wisdom, it is there. Even when you fear the future, Allah is already protecting you from what you do not know. This realization softens the heart and brings a tranquility that no worldly reassurance can provide. Trust that the one who wrote your story knows exactly how to guide you through it. When a person truly leaves their affairs in Allah's hand, something begins to change deep within them. It's not loud, not dramatic, and not always visible to the outside world at first. But internally, the heart starts shifting. The way you see life, the way you interpret challenges, the way you respond to blessings, the way you carry yourself, it all starts to transform. Tawakkul is not just a spiritual concept, it is a lived reality. It doesn't simply sit in the mind as a belief, it settles into the heart as a guiding force. And when that happens, your entire approach to life becomes different. You begin to realize that when you trust Allah completely, your priorities automatically begin to reorganize themselves. What once consumed your energy stops feeling so heavy. What once frightened you stops feeling so paralyzing. What once confused you becomes easier to navigate. Tawakkul brings clarity not because all questions are answered, but because your heart stops demanding answers at every turn. It starts trusting the one who already knows the answers. This inner transformation shows itself in small but powerful ways. You start observing that your reactions become calmer. People around you may panic, but your heart remains anchored because you're not relying on worldly assurances. You're relying on Allah. Others may lose faith when things shift unexpectedly, but you find yourself holding on to the quiet certainty that every shift is part of a larger design. This is not blind optimism, it is faith that has matured, faith that has tasted enough of life to know that Allah's plan has never once been anything but generous. One of the most beautiful outcomes of leaving everything in Allah's hand is that your sense of purpose becomes clearer. You stop living life purely for worldly metrics, success, status, validation, comparison. Instead, you begin to live with a spiritual awareness that every moment has meaning, every action has weight, and every intention shapes the path ahead. You start focusing on what Allah wants from you, not what people expect from you, and that shift in itself is liberation. You move from performing for the world to performing for the one who sees your heart. This kind of transformation also changes how you view hardship. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you start to ask, "What is Allah teaching me through this?" Hardships stop feeling like roadblocks and start feeling like stepping stones. Uncomfortable, yes, but purposeful. You begin to notice that every difficulty refines you in a way ease never could. Every moment of pain humbles you, strengthens you, purifies you, and pushes you closer to Allah. You stop seeing trials as punishments and begin to see them as divine invitations, opportunities to return, to reflect, to grow. And when blessings come your way, your heart responds differently too. Instead of attributing success to your own abilities, you recognize it as a gift from Allah. This keeps your ego in check. You do not become arrogant when things go well because you understand that the one who gave can also withhold, and the one who withholds does so with wisdom and mercy. This awareness creates humility, and humility is a form of beauty that Allah loves. You also start to notice a change in your dua. Instead of making dua with desperation driven by fear, you begin making dua with calmness driven by trust. You still ask, you still hope, you still strive, but your tone becomes softer. You no longer demand outcomes, you present your needs and trust the response. whatever it may be. Dua becomes less about changing destiny and more about aligning your heart with Allah's wisdom. And when you make dua from that place, the heart feels lighter because it knows it is speaking to the one who understands it better than it understands itself. Tawakkul also influences your relationships. When you leave everything in Allah's hand, you stop forcing relationships that are not meant for you. You stop clinging to people out of fear of loss. You stop depending on others for emotional validation. Instead, you begin to interact with people from a place of strength rather than insecurity. You treat them with kindness, sincerity, and compassion, but you don't attach your sense of worth to them. You love for the sake of Allah, not for the sake of filling a void. And when Allah becomes the anchor of your heart, no person can control your peace. Another transformation that emerges is courage. When you trust Allah with your future, you stop being afraid of taking steps forward. You stop being afraid of failure, because you understand that failure in the worldly sense might be success in Allah's eyes. You stop being afraid of change, because you know Allah is guiding every transition. You stop being afraid of uncertainty, because uncertainty is only frightening when you believe you are walking alone. Tawakkul gives you the courage to begin, the patience to continue, and the serenity to accept whatever comes. This transformation also improves your discipline. You start waking up with purpose because you know life is not random. You become more consistent in worship because you realize that your strength is coming from the connection you maintain with Allah. You start improving your character because you know that the best measure of faith is how you treat others. You avoid sins not just out of fear of punishment, but because your heart feels uncomfortable distancing itself from the one it trusts. And slowly, with time, you begin to notice that the more you leave in Allah's hands, the more your life aligns itself in ways you could never have orchestrated. The right opportunities come at the right time, not early, not late. The right people enter your life exactly when you need them. The right lessons appear exactly when you're ready for them. Things you once chased start finding their way to you. And you realize that peace was never in controlling life. Peace was always in surrendering to the one who controls it. This is the transformation Tawakkul brings. It does not change your circumstances overnight, but it changes you. And when you change, the world feels different, not because the world changed, but because your heart finally learned where to rest. Leave everything in Allah's hand and watch how He transforms everything in your heart.